Have you ever asked yourself why some ancient texts were cherished by early believers, only to be buried and silenced later by those in power? Why do certain scriptures get pushed into the shadows, labeled forbidden, while others are paraded as the only path to truth? What if you've been reading your Bible faithfully and wholeheartedly, but never realized that entire chapters of spiritual truth, divine mysteries, celestial revelations, have been removed from your sight? You've heard of Genesis. Maybe you've even memorized parts of it, but what if I told you there's another version? One that doesn't just tell the story of creation, but rewrites everything you thought you knew about time, angels, covenants, and the deeper workings of heaven itself. You might think this so-called Book of Jubilees is just a repetition of Genesis, but it's not what you think, because buried within its pages is a truth so bold, so unsettling, that religious leaders across history tried to erase it completely. And the question is, why? The moment we begin to pull back the veil on books like Jubilees, we uncover a spiritual urgency. We're not just talking about lost literature. We're talking about divine knowledge, timelines ordained by God, prophetic warnings, angelic messages, and cosmic patterns that impact your destiny today. When that knowledge is withheld, we don't just lose a book, we lose alignment. We lose clarity. We lose our place in the sacred rhythm of heaven, and that's the danger. Without this awareness, you may be walking through life thinking you're on God's path, when in reality, you're operating on man's version of time, man's version of holiness, and man's version of history. But when you dare to open what was once forbidden, something powerful happens. You begin to remember who you are. You begin to awaken to a divine timeline that still pulses underneath the chaos of this world. You begin to realize you were meant to see more. So let's begin. Because in the Book of Jubilees, we're introduced to something that completely redefines how we understand time itself, a divine calendar. A holy structure of days, months, and years that follows a 364-day cycle, perfect, unmoving, pure. It's not the same lunar calendar adopted later on by religious systems and human empires. This was God's original timeline given to Enoch, passed to Noah, and later entrusted to Moses. Every holy day, every appointed season was laid out with precise spiritual meaning. But what happens when that divine calendar is replaced? Confusion sets in. Sacred days get distorted. Prophetic alignment becomes murky, and slowly, the people of God become disconnected from His timing. This isn't just an ancient problem. It's happening now. Every time we celebrate a spiritual day based on the wrong rhythm, every time we align ourselves with the world's calendar instead of God's, we fall out of sync with heaven. Think about it. How many moments of your life have you questioned why things feel off? Maybe you're praying, fasting, doing everything right, but still feeling delayed, confused, or stuck. Could it be you're living on a borrowed rhythm? This is your moment to reflect. What if you paused and asked, am I living by divine order? Am I walking through my days with the rhythm of heaven? Or have I unknowingly adopted a system built by man, not God? The Book of Jubilees calls you to realign, not with fear, but with faith. You're being invited back into sacred time, but that's only the beginning. Because once you start aligning with divine timing, you also uncover the deeper war beneath it all. The Book of Jubilees speaks clearly about entities most people today refuse to believe in, the Watchers. Fallen angels, beings of celestial origin who crossed into the realm of men, not with the blessing of God, but in rebellion against Him. They didn't come to help, they came to corrupt, and what they left behind still lingers. These Watchers taught mankind sorcery. They distorted purity. They gave rise to idolatry, vanity, weapons of war, and manipulation of the soul. These were not myths. They were spiritual intrusions, ancient disruptions, and their influence runs deeper than we realize. Because the same spirits that once taught humanity to rebel against heaven now whisper through modern culture. They shape entertainment, twist identities, and confuse hearts. You think your temptation is random? You think your struggles are only personal? The Book of Jubilees makes it clear. There is a war, ancient, ongoing, invisible, and you are part of it. So let me ask you, when was the last time you truly examined the forces operating around your life? The thoughts that enter your mind, the emotions that overwhelm your heart, are they all really yours? Or have you inherited a spiritual battle passed down through generations, rooted in this very rebellion? It's not just about knowing the story. It's about waking up to the war, because once you do, you start seeing clearly. You begin to ask the right questions. You begin to pray with authority. You stop reacting to the chaos around you and start discerning it for what it is, a spiritual attack rooted in forgotten history. The moment you realize the watchers are real, the moment you understand their influence didn't die with ancient times, is the moment you reclaim your power to stand against it. But there is another secret buried in this forbidden book, one that touches the very bloodline of your spirit. While many of us are taught about God's covenant with Abraham, Jubilees unveils a covenant that goes even deeper. It speaks of a generational holiness, passed down not by default, but by design. The Book of Jubilees teaches that obedience isn't just a moment, it's a lineage, a legacy, a divine torch passed from one soul to another across time. And with that legacy comes responsibility. It reveals that some generations were set apart, marked, chosen, and others fell, not because of blood but because of betrayal, because they forgot the covenant. They turned away, and when they did, they disconnected not just themselves, but everyone who would come after them. This hits home, because we live in a time where people are obsessed with ancestry, DNA tests, and family trees. But God is asking, where is your spiritual lineage? Who passed you the torch of faith? Are you holding it or letting it burn out? Jubilees tells us something our modern world refuses to accept. Legacy is obedience. It's not your last name. It's not your job title. It's whether you remembered the covenant. It's whether you honored the sacred in the midst of a fallen world. So today, you're faced with a choice. Will you be the break in the chain or the link that restores it? Will you pass on a legacy of compromise or a legacy of holiness? The book they banned is now speaking again, and it's calling you not just to remember, but to be remembered. For righteousness, for courage, for standing in the gap when everyone else bowed to comfort. The choice is yours, and the time is now. But to carry that legacy, you must first break the cycle. The Book of Jubilees doesn't shy away from the harsh truth. It shows us that sin is not just an act, it's a pattern, a generational rhythm that repeats itself when it's not broken. From Adam to Cain, from the giants to the flood, to Babel and beyond. Humanity kept falling into the same trap, and every time God brought a reset. We've been taught to see sin as isolated events, a mistake here, a weakness there. But this book reveals something deeper. It shows us that sin is a current, passed from parent to child, community to culture. It lingers until someone somewhere stands up and says, "This stops with me." That's what the flood was. That's what Babel was. Not just judgment, but reset. Mercy wrapped in warning. If you've been feeling like your life is stuck on repeat, like no matter how hard you try, you circle back to the same pain, the same habits, the same emotional spiral, it's not just you. You may be standing in the middle of a spiritual pattern passed down from generations, and now you're being given the chance to be the interruption, the reset. But how? How do you do what others before you could not? It starts with surrender, not effort, not perfection, but a bold, raw surrender that says, "God, I can't fix what they broke, but I give you permission to make me new." That kind of surrender breaks curses. It changes timelines. It resets destinies. Don't underestimate what your surrender can do. One surrendered heart can reset an entire family line. One honest prayer can begin a new rhythm of holiness. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be willing to be the one who breaks the cycle. And here is the truth that many don't want to hear. This book was banned not because it was false, but because it was dangerous to those who wanted control. The Book of Jubilees wasn't lost. It was silenced. Early church councils rejected it, not because it contradicted truth, but because it revealed too much of it. This book doesn't just recount events, it exposes systems. It unmasks how divine order was replaced by religious manipulation. It dares to declare that not all traditions are sacred, some are counterfeit, and that threatens those who rely on power, not presence. But God preserved this book through the faithfulness of those who refused to let truth die. It remained alive in places the empire couldn't reach: Ethiopia, the desert, hidden corners of faith that never bowed to political theology. So ask yourself, why would anyone want this book buried? What does it reveal that makes it so disruptive? The answer is simple. It gives power back to the people. It reminds you that holiness isn't owned by a priest, a church, or a government. It's written in your bones. It's sealed in your obedience, and no one can take that from you unless you let them. Now is your moment to reclaim what was stolen. Not just knowledge, but authority. Read what they told you not to read. Question what they told you never to question. And let the Holy Spirit reveal what man tried to hide. Because in these pages, there's something else that demands your attention. Something personal, sacred, and unseen by the human eye. The Book of Jubilees teaches that every act of your life is being recorded, not by man, but by angels. Celestial beings keeping divine scrolls of every decision, every word, every moment of love, and every moment of rebellion. It's not meant to scare you, it's meant to awaken you, because we live in a world that teaches us we're invisible, that our pain is ignored, that our sacrifices go unnoticed. But this book whispers a deeper truth. Heaven sees you, every silent tear, every quiet act of kindness, every time you chose righteousness when no one else did, every battle you fought alone. It's all recorded, and not in judgment but in remembrance. You are not forgotten. Your story is sacred, but this also means something else. It means your choices echo. They don't disappear. They build. They accumulate. You're not just living a life, you're writing a legacy in the heavens. So how will you live if you know heaven is recording? How will you speak, forgive, give, or stand? If you realize that your life is being etched in eternal ink. This isn't about paranoia, it's about purpose. Knowing that you are known, that your efforts are never wasted, that God's messengers are not just watching, they're witnessing your faith, even when the world doesn't. Start each day remembering, I am seen, I am known, I am recorded in love, and let that truth shape the way you walk, the way you rise, the way you pray. You are not a random spark in the dark. You are a story being written, a soul being remembered, a light being watched by heaven itself. But if your story is being written, then the question becomes, what kind of inheritance are you leaving behind? Because the Book of Jubilees makes something crystal clear. Spiritual inheritance isn't about bloodline, it's about obedience. Legacy is not guaranteed by your last name. It's not sealed by family tradition. It's confirmed by the choices you make day after day, when no one's watching but God. This truth is heavy, but freeing. You are not bound by the failures of your ancestors, and you are not automatically entitled to their blessings either. Obedience determines inheritance. Jubilees shows that the sons of Jacob, who walked in righteousness, received blessings that echoed through generations. But those who disobeyed, Their inheritance was cut short, not out of punishment, but because they chose a different path. You may have been taught that because you come from a certain family, certain blessings are yours. Or maybe you were told the opposite, that because your background is broken, you'll never rise. But heaven doesn't see you through the lens of family history. It sees you through the lens of covenant, and the covenant is alive. So ask yourself, am I walking in obedience or coasting on borrowed legacy? Am I choosing faith or repeating compromise? Because what you do today can either restore what was lost or break what was passed down. You are the hinge point. You can be the one who reclaims inheritance through faithfulness, or the one who loses it through apathy. The power is in your hands, not because of your name, but because of your willingness to obey. And that obedience matters now more than ever, because the Book of Jubilees doesn't just look backward, it looks forward. It speaks of judgment, not as a far-off threat, but as a divine inevitability. And with that judgment comes supernatural protection for those who are aligned with God. We're living in turbulent times. The earth shakes, systems crumble, darkness rises, and many are wondering, where is safety? Where is refuge? The answer is found in spiritual positioning, not physical location. Just like Noah built an ark before the flood, those who walk in God's covenant are building arks of obedience today, invisible shelters made of trust, faith, and surrender. Jubilees reveals that when judgment falls, it doesn't fall blindly. It moves with precision. It separates, it preserves the faithful, and it exposes the false. So if you feel fear rising, don't run, return. Return to holiness, return to divine alignment, return to sacred time, sacred obedience, sacred remembrance. That's where protection is found. Not in politics, not in escape, but in presence, in communion, in being found in Him when the storm comes. And you're not meant to do this alone. Form a circle, pray with others, read together, seek light together, because protection is not only individual, it's communal. A remnant rising, a people preserved not by religion but by relationship. And here is where the message of Jubilees becomes a prophetic call, a declaration, a trumpet blast to the chosen. We are the generation who awakens. The scrolls are being unsealed. The knowledge is returning. The remnant is rising. The truths once buried are now resurrecting, and with them a people who refuse to be spiritually blind any longer. We are the Daniels of this hour, studying ancient texts to discern our times. We are the Esthers, prepared for such a time as this. We are the torchbearers of forbidden truth, not to rebel, but to restore. And it starts with a decision. Not to just believe differently, but to live differently, to declare, I will not walk in ignorance, I will not let history silence my spirit, I will rise with wisdom, I will honor the covenant, I will walk as one who knows the scrolls are open and heaven is watching. Say it with your life, I am part of the remnant, I carry ancient truth, I walk in divine awareness, I will not be silenced. I will not be lost. I have been found for this moment, for this hour, for this calling. Let the forbidden become remembered. Let the buried become restored. Let the remnant arise. You've heard the stories. You've followed the scriptures you were given. But today, something deeper has been stirred. The veil has been lifted, and what was once hidden has now been placed into your hands. The Book of Jubilees is not just an ancient scroll. It's a mirror showing you the rhythms of heaven, the battles of angels, the patterns of sin, the endurance of covenant, and the urgency of now. This wasn't about curiosity, it was about remembrance. You were meant to hear this. You were meant to awaken. The timelines of God, the fall of the watchers, the covenant of generations, the sin cycles, the silencing of truth, the divine record of your life, the inheritance of obedience, the protection of the faithful, and the rise of the remnant. These are not just teachings, they are a summons. So now you must decide. What will you do with what you've heard? Will you return to comfort or rise with conviction? Will you let the world dictate your faith, or will you step into the sacred legacy that's calling your name? You are not here by accident. The path of truth has found you. Today, you are invited to live differently, to walk in divine rhythm, to surrender with full trust, to stand in obedience when others bow to convenience, to remember that you are seen, recorded, preserved, and called for a greater purpose, to become a living declaration of what was once forbidden, now redeemed. And if your spirit has stirred, if your heart feels the weight of this moment, don't keep it to yourself. Share this message. Let others remember. Let others awaken. Let the remnant find one another and rise. And above all, stay aligned, stay faithful, and stay ready. The scrolls are open. The call has gone out. Walk boldly into the truth they never wanted you to know. And never forget, you were chosen to remember.